Welcome back to Giving Spring Podcast. And we are so excited today to have a special guest with us who will introduce himself. And as well as since the special shoot today, we are going to be talking a little bit more about fathers.
Yes, so happy Father's Day to all fathers out there. Today we're going to focus a lot more on fatherhood and mental health, how fathers struggle mentally and how they can overcome those struggles. So stay tuned, join in, and enjoy this episode.
Yeah. So now let's have our guest introduce himself.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here with these two amazing people. And my name is Brother Leo Johnson, and I am the founder of Giving Spring Foundation and this podcast. And I'm grateful to be with all of you today and being invited. Me too.
Thank you so much. Welcome, Brother Leo. We're very, very excited to have you and just to hear more about your journey in fatherhood.
So before we start, we would like to know, okay, we know that our theme is based on fathers and fatherhood. How many children do you have and how many of them are like daughters and sons? And what was it like just them growing up? How did you, based on your father and how is his impact of being a father to you help you being a father to your children?
I have 5 children. I have my 2 boys and 3 girls. My oldest 2 children are boys. They're 18 months apart. And then I had 3 daughters. And they're all amazing children. We had a great life. But when they were all apart, each one of them is about 3 years apart. My youngest is 5 years. Her sister is just older than her. So she was like the caboose. And you know what? That's what I was. So I come from a family of 5 children and 4 siblings, and I was the very youngest. I was 5 years younger than my next sibling, who was a sister of mine who became like a second mother to me. So I was like the little baby. My brother is 15 years older than me, my oldest brother. And so he was like some distant relative that would come around. Because if you think about it, I was like 5 years old and he was already out of the home and going to school. And yeah. And I grew up in North Hollywood, California. So for those who are members of our church, my family was from Utah, but about 3 years before I was born, my father had an opportunity to start a business in Los Angeles. So they moved to Los Angeles from Utah. So my siblings had their early years in Utah. And then I grew up completely in California. I was in North Hollywood. So this is just north of Hollywood, California. There's a mountain range just separates North Hollywood to Hollywood. So I lived in quite an exciting area back in the 60s. So I'm an old guy. So I was born in 1958. But in that era, that area of Los Angeles was a very safe, very growing area where the TV industry, movies and TV industry was there. So I had interesting growing up in school. To me, it was just a normal life. It was fun to meet some movie stars that were famous at that time. And people my age or children that were my age, that were child stars that were in TV shows that were when they were young. And I went to school with them. And we could talk about a few from the room, but everybody who's listening to this, well, I have no idea who they are. But the people that are my age from the United States would definitely know who they are. They're very well known. And so I grew up in that environment. I lived in an area in North Hollywood that was a lot of Jewish people. The church, the ward that I attended was called the Studio City Ward because it was nearby a lot of the studios, the movie studios. The town was called Studio City. And that was the word that if you were a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and you wanted to show business, be on TV or a singer, or you would, if you're a member of the church, you would come to that word. So we had some the most well-known members of the church who were in the movie or music industry to our work. So it's interesting growing up in that era. Los Angeles.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, probably you are even a child star. You're just being humble right
I
now.
know.
No, no,
I know.
no. Oh, no, that's awesome. That's awesome. I really liked the question that Siobhan was speaking about. How has your father's influenced in the way that you're raising your children now? So
Yeah.
maybe from looking back to your olden days and how things are done now, what similar things did you keep in raising your children back?
So my father was a very good father. I was the youngest, and so he always told me that he learned how to be a father with my older siblings, especially my older brother, because there was my brother who was 50 years older than me, and then there was me at the youngest, and there was three girls in between. He says that he was not a very good father at the beginning because he had just come out of World War II, and he was a leader officer in the World War II, served 5 years. Most of those years were the Asia conflict. There was the European conflict and then the Asia, Japan against Japan. And it was over there in New Guinea and that area, Philippines and stuff, as a military officer. So he says, I came home and he just had when he first met my brother, brother was 2 years old, because my father was away in the war. My mother had lived with her parents in Salt Lake City. And so she had a little boy who didn't ever met his father until he was 2 years old, my brother. So when I was quite a bit younger, later on when I was born, he would always tell me that I think I understand the right ways of being a father and to treat you a little differently, like you're not just one of my soldiers. So he did. And he was a little bit older when I was born. He was about 47 years old. So, when I grew up, he was in his 50s and 60s. I was still in school and also he was a bit older as a dad, but he worked hard. He was a hard worker. He owned his own business and was very busy, but he also, during my high school years, he was the bishop of our ward. And so he would always teach me how to work. So I think if there's one thing that I remember my father did well, was not only give me time, but also taught me how to work. So he had a business. And so every free moment, like on Saturdays where there's no school, I had to work most of the time. I hated it, but I had to work a lot at his business. And then when I was in high school, I had during the summer period of time. So in the United States, especially in Los Angeles area, our summer was from June, July, and August off of school. Went back beginning of September. And those 3 months when I was in high school, it started to drive because you can drive 16 years old in the United States. And I had to drive a truck and distribute supplies to various restaurants, businesses, in different parts of the Los Angeles area. So I got to know Los Angeles, which is the second largest city in the United States, the top 10 of the world, and got to know it quite well as a guy driving around and going into places that probably an average 60-year-old would not have gotten. I learned a lot. I learned how to work hard. So that's what I did for my father. It was also, as he became a bishop, it really was a calling that he loved. And also because he was in his later years, he really loved that calling, had a unique word, as I was explaining to you. And so he turned a lot of his free time into studying scriptures and reading quite a bit to people. And he would, those we to do a lot of care of the garden at the church and things, and he'd always take me with. So I would say that we weren't like best of friends in terms of he's best friend kind of type of person, but he was very loving, very taught me how to work, and was a spiritual leader that I looked up to, or somebody who put his later part of his life in helping other people. We had many people at various times of our life where he would bring them into our home for whatever reason. And he would give his coat off his back to somebody and maybe never get it returned. There's whole stories. So, and my mother was always the kindest, sweetest, called me sugar. She was just a great mom. And I was very close to my mom. She got involved in my life and interest very much. So, my father worked a lot. And she comes from a very strong background that I'm proud to tell my children that they're seventh generation members of the church. That comes through my mom's life. So my mom's, I would say, great grandmother was a pioneer at Joseph, and was a midwife. Her name was Patty Bartlett Sessions, and she had delivered over 2,900 babies during the early days of the church. They went across the plains to Utah from Nauvoo, Illinois. She delivered babies all the time through the years, and she delivered a lot of Brigham Young's children and others. And she was a contemporary or a good friend with Joseph and his wife, Emma. And so that line is very strong in the church. I had mentioned that my grandfather, my mom's father, was the mission president in South Africa, 1921 to 26. And was there 6 years. My mother was 3 years old, went to South Africa, went to a British school in Cape Town, where they went to the Mowbray, where the mission was used to for all of Africa. This is the only mission in all of Africa at the time. And just a quick story, which I've shared with many people at Getting Spring, but when he got there in 1921, there were no missionaries. They had been kicked out by the government of South Africa because they were concerned that girls were joining the church, and the young men were taking them back to Utah. And there's a couple stories, one or two girls that moved to Utah. And so that kind of got blown out of proportion. And he took him about 9 months. He was at Cape Town, but he had to go up to Pretoria a lot to work with the government and help convince them that our church isn't that bad. We're not going to steal the women. So he eventually got approval to have the church reinstated, to have missionaries come, and approval to have up to 24. But in those days, you had to get on a ship. You get a month ship to London, and then from there down to Cape Town. And so it took a month and a half to get there. So it took a while for young missionaries. In those days, were a little older. They were probably in their upper 20s. And some of them had career jobs and things. So he eventually had up to 24 missionaries. They were there for 6 years. So that's my background with my parents. And so that history and that expectation that we carry on our name and that I was a sixth generation member of the church was taught to me, and part of my personality or nature by growing up with that teaching quite a bit. It made you realize that you have an identity, that you got to carry the name of the family for pioneers of the church. So that kind of filtered into me as I grew up.
That's so amazing. I love that you have so many stories that you can share about your parents, not just your father, but your mother also. And to be given 6 generations in the church is crazy, especially because in South Africa, it's not really that common to hear of it. But that's so awesome that you're able to share so much, and that even though through some struggles that were mentioned, that you were still able to have your father, and that he was such a strong figure of hard work in your life. So with having that and everything that your father stood for, how did that make you feel? What advice did he give you when you were a father for the first time?
Oh,
Yeah. And I'll take that question into my story with my oldest son, Wesley, Wes. So when Susan, my wife, and I got married in 1982, we met in Brigham Young University. She's from Washington, D.C. area, which is Northern Virginia. And I was from Los Angeles. And so we met at BYU. At BYU, Susan had about one semester left to graduate as a speech pathologist, and I had a year to go. And I majored in accounting. She worked and just graduated, so she was working in her field of helping kids with their speech. And we were in Provo, Utah, Brigham Young University is, and I worked on the side. I went to finish school as fast as I could. I learned just in that story alone, I learned that a young couple, if you're in love and you should are members of the church and all, you should be able to you should get married as soon as possible. Don't wait till everyone's perfect. Don't wait till let's wait till we both have jobs and careers and then we'll get married. So we can afford each other. We just survived through it. They lived in small apartments, had church callings, went to law school. President Nelson had the stories. So it's common for us in the church in the United States and in Utah. We feel you find somebody that you know is the spouse you want to marry, and both can be great parents and live the gospel together. I have all that in common. You get married, you don't wait. And so we did. And so within a year or so, a year and a half, we had a child, our first boy, Wes. And so we were excited with that. Wesley was a baby when we just graduated from BYU. I moved down to San Diego. We moved to San Diego, California, where my wife's parents moved to from Washington, D.C. area, and moved down to San Diego. And we lived in their house for a little bit. And I got a job down there with a computer company as an accountant. And it was a fast growing computer company. And we had Wesley, our first son. So we lived in a little apartment, and he was an incredible little boy. But coming back to your question, as he got older, and then we started having our second son 18 months later, and then 3 years later had a girl, Jamie. Now, my role as a father in those early days, when we just had 3 out of our 5 children at that stage, I was working hard. I was working long hours. I was in the computer industry where it was just taking off. This is when PCs, personal computers, were just starting. I worked for a pioneer company out of San Diego. That was the first companies that created a PC computer. And I had started to grow very fast. And so I was able to advance in the company quickly. But so I was busy. Susan was take care of Wesley. And then Danny, eventually both of them born in San Diego. And but my upbringing as my father, seeing him owning his own business and working hard, plus a good father, I made an effort. It takes effort. Made an effort always, when I left work and came home, my intentions were for my family. And so I would just spend one time with my boys when they were young. And so kind of come back to your very first question about my father, what I learned from my father and me. So Wes was, as he got older, I'm going to kind of speed the story from when he was older in high school, from 1 year old all the way to 16 years old. But during that period of time when he was like 6, 7, 8 years old, he was the type of personality that if whenever, let's say I got mad or got angry because he was teasing his younger brother and he was getting to a point where it was like too much, I would get after him and try to discipline him. And he would say, "Dad, I'm getting mad." He was so sensitive in his personality that he always reminded us I'd beat a father the wrong way. He wouldn't stop. And Susan, my wife, is the same way, where we tried to we're learning to be parents. So you start disciplining and you start trying to say, different tactics to get them, because there was two boys 18 months apart, and they just got on each other a lot. And it was actually it was a time when the younger son, he knew how to wrap his parents around his finger, control them a little. Like he would do it in a kind way to Susan. He'd say, "Oh, it's okay." He would act like, "Oh yeah, I'll do that." But then he would go behind the scenes and tease his older brother. Wesley was the type who was just, he didn't have that skill as much. Either he was what his feelings were, his heart. So if he felt like he was being picked on, they'd argue, and then he'd always be the one getting in trouble. We would say, "Wait," and then Susan and I would talk and say, "You know what? Dan's the one who's causing Wes to get this way." So we were just dealing with those two boys, and Wesley helped us as parents be better parents. Danny was always a good boy. He would just let the tease his brother because he knew it would get his brother to the situation where he might get in trouble. So Wes, the reason why I say he taught us how to be a good father and mother, especially me as a father, was his emotions would help convey to me like a mirror whether I handling him correctly or not. And that carried over. And there was times when he was a little older where he would threaten to run away from home, do things he thinks that he'd call his younger brother my precious brother. And so he just thought, we thought we loved Danny more than Wes. And it was not true. We tried hard. So we got better as fathers, parents with these two over time. And Wes is an amazing father himself with 4 children. He's got 3. His oldest is a girl, and he's incredible. He's loved by many people. He's an international coach, triathlon coach, and everybody loves him. Whenever he started his coaching, people would come up to me and Susan and just say, "You raised an amazing man." And these were older people and the younger who were coached by him. So we did something right, but I think it was more him and them being in a good environment. And I think a lot of that fatherhood is through example as much as is verbal. But I think there's one thing that I would say I learned from my father, and I did the best I can, is you give your kids time. You give them as much time as you can. You're there for them. There are times the activities that they're involved in. And it wasn't easy. When they were in junior high school age, 16, 17 years old, when I was traveling around the world I was gone a lot. I was a bishop at that time as well. But I traveled a lot. I was all over the world traveling. I just come home and dedicate my time with church. Sometimes I'd be interviewing members of the church from a hotel room. Sometimes I would always be there around during the weeks that I was involved with their sports. Time is, to me, is a huge thing. Father needs to share blessings with your wife.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that was so incredible. I think that was like such a wonderfully packed thing to be, right? Yeah, we learned a lot.
Ask me a question, I'm going to give you not a short answer.
Yeah, it's, oh man, I just also, it was one of the questions that I was going to ask, being a businessman and being a father, like
church leader.
and the church leader. You have so much input, like how did you balance and control everything? But I love how you said your children also raised you on how to become a father to them. And you did it by example and by hard working. And I'm pretty sure they really appreciated all that you have done for them as well. And I really liked even just realizing how important it is to keep things in a balance, give time to your children because that's how you build bonding, that's how you are present within their lives. Give them time. I think that's the greatest gift any parent can give to a child.
Just being present.
So now a question that I would like to also ask would be, did fatherhood turn out the way you expected it to? And if not exactly how you expected it to, what other lessons did you learn throughout being a father?
As I think about that question, I did not have any huge surprises. the one thing of being the youngest in my family, my personal family of my siblings, is that I
Huh.
was able to observe the strengths and weaknesses of my siblings and the roles that they played. So I was around a lot of nephews and nieces before I was born. So before I was a father, I'm sorry, before I was born as a father. But so I had been around a lot of children, and so it was not a surprise to me at all. Also, so we walked into being parents with Wes and then Danny and then Jamie, our daughter who was born in the Netherlands. We were in Europe at the time, so she was born at Vanessa and Lindsay. Was my children. And I don't know, we just jumped in with 100% of interest, and the Lord blesses you with inspirational guidance. I think mothers are naturally mothers. There's just a natural side of it. Even I've seen some mothers who maybe were not very career oriented. I have one daughter-in-law who is a lawyer. The very first part of their marriage, we're a power couple, the two of them, both lawyers. But my son and his wife, but they have 4 children now. And that's it. She's learned to you change once you have children. I've noticed that in my kids plus ourselves. They just absolutely change that role of motherhood. And then a father, I think you have to make a little more of a effort because some fathers naturally just think that their wives do it all. That's not the way I was raised and born up. It was a part of me just to be a part of it all. I'm not sure in South Africa how this is evolving. I'll let you all decide this, but here in the United States, the young parents of today, especially in the church, but I noticed it outside the church as well. Husbands are more involved with their children at early ages. It used to be back in the 50s and the 60s. And we're there when the baby's born at the hospital. We're there to change diapers. So that's really quite a different role. I was actually surprised watching some of these young married couples now. You have a child and the mother takes the child to the doctor or visits just to do checkups and things. Some of the young fathers go with to the doctors. And I never did. I'm back in the 80s, 90s, I was a parent, but now they do that. They just go get off work for an hour and go to the doctor with their wife. And that to me is, do you really both need to be there? Just for a little simple checkups. But is that role as a father being more engaged with the everyday process of changing diapers, to their food, and sharing that with their wives is evolves because I think a lot more women are working in the United States than they used to. And when I was there. So I guess my answer to your question is it just came naturally, but how to be a good father and a good mother takes experience. The only way you have that experience by jumping in and being a mother or father. You'll never learn it otherwise. And you can be an au pair or go work for some other family and be, as a lot of girls do, to help another family's kids. But until you have your own, it's for experience, love, bonds you have. Like a mother, a special bond, since it was came from her body, but the dad can just a type of relationship as well. It's the effort to just naturally be a part of the process, the whole experience.
Yeah, I think that's so true. A lot of times we don't see fathers being present. And I like that you mentioned about that and how important it is. But I think there's also a lot of times when fathers feel overwhelmed because they feel like they had a lot that they had to do. And especially just thinking of your family, having 5 kids, and then you're also married, you have to make time for your wife, and then also work and church. With all of these responsibilities, it's normal to feel overwhelmed. So how were you able to, with all juggle all of the different activities and responsibilities that you had, and still take care of your own mental health?
Yeah. So I had followed, there's different quotes or statements or information you've learned through the years, and some stick with you and you make it a part of your life if you can. I share with all our giving experience students many times this poem that's one of them that I follow, I believe in wholeheartedly. Stick to your task till it sticks to you. Beginners are many, but enders are few. Honor, power, place, and praise come to the one who stays. Consistency. That's a big thing. But in terms of fatherhood, one of the things I did in the busiest time of my life, which was actually during the time of my older kids were in their high school age. Lindsay, who was our youngest, was still a little bit younger. And that was the busiest time I had and the most challenging. I was co-founding a company and struggling for a while. We struggled through it and I had to travel a lot. And so it was a tough time. That was the time they needed me as a father the most. So one of the things there was a book by Stephen R. Covey. Okay, so he's a member of the church who made his life on being business consultant to businesses about how to be highly effective people. He has a bestseller book that's a world-renowned book, and he's passed away now. He basically taught LDS gospel principles, Latter-day Saint gospel principles to the secular world, to the business world. He took 8 principles. And something out of his book that really resonated with me early on in my life when I was younger was he said how as a father, you're working all and you're busy, there's stress, there's different things, especially in the setting I was in, which is a business, not a physical labor, right, working. But the area I was in, you're starting businesses, there's a lot of stress. And he was saying that when you come home, so you're at work, your wife's at home with the kids, but when you come home, pause. You hit the pause button. Sometimes you have so much noise, music, just kind of pause it and be quiet. He suggested right before you come home, before you walk into the door, as you drive in your car or however you're getting home, your bus, but when you're riding at home, before you go in, get yourself mentally and emotionally prepared to expect anything that may happen once you walk in that door and be prepared for it. So in other words, the old way is a man would come home, be so busy and everything, he worked hard, more even if it's physical, working in a mine or something, just total stress, a boss getting after you and you work 12-hour days and you come home, whatever the environment is, in some ways it's not different in terms of your emotional stability. So the old way would be I come home and I say, hello, everyone, I'm so tired. I'm having a bad day and I'm going to go lay down. You say hi and everybody for 10 seconds and then you go lay down, write your colors, or you go watch the front of the television. And you sit there, I can relax. Hey, wife, can you get me a beer or just some drink? Or you get me this because I'm just so tired. And then you start telling her what to do to help you out. So it's all me. And this Stephen R. Covey is saying, when you open that door, prepare yourself for whatever may happen. You may come in and your wife just gives you a big hug. Everything was a beautiful day. And you just, what can I do for you? But usually that's less than 1% of the time. But usually you come home and they just are been pulling their hair all. They've had kids, they've been running around, taking care of the kids. And one of them's been sick. Another one's having this problem. The toilet's not working, whatever. And you have all these issues. So when you come home, prepare yourself to just take over. If your wife, she's the one that needs the prayer. And what's the difference? The difference is that your stress as a father and being in a working environment is a complete different stress than when you have a environment at home where you have little kids and dealing with children. Or one of your children's a little older and came home with drugs or whatever. You can take it at every stage of life. And you just come and deal with it. Put away your work. Shut the door on your work. It's not going to change. Your work's not going to change at all when you get home, 6 o'clock p.m. or 5 p.m. And deal with what you have as a father. Turn yourself into that role. That's your priority. And have the resources to be able to, capacity, the internal, spiritual, and emotional capacity to handle whatever's there and to let your wife take a prayer. Because she's there 24/7 for those who are not working. You've been in different work environments with adults. So that was a teaching thing that I took to heart. And I did that as best. The other thing is nowadays world, both husband and wife work. And so you're coming home. And that's when both of you, when you're both working full time and you have children, somebody watching your children or they're in preschool, you need to spend a lot of time with them. Because if you think of 24 hours a day, you're sleeping 8 hours. So that's 16 hours left. And you're working, let's say, 8 hours a day. So you got 8 hours left. And then so you have, travel time is maybe another hour each side. So let's say 4 hours, 8 hours, 6 hours. Your time is less and less. You're both working full time to be with your children. And earlier I talked about time, number one thing. Back in the 60s and 70s, usually in the United States, the women did not work as much. Now that we're all working because the economy requirements are there and the cost, that you only have a window of opportunity to be a true mother and father in the morning, which you're going to make it a wonderful or incredible experience to prepare your children, to have good breakfasts, a loving environment, have prayer. And then in the evenings, you got to spend a lot of time. The whole time is dedicated to you and your children and families. I think that's how you work through multiple tasks. If you listen to the stories of President Nelson's children, we had 9 children. They all mentioned how he was home. He was not home a lot as a medical doctor and as a surgeon, plus his travel and his church calling. When he came home, he would always look for the children. They don't miss children events. They don't try to do everything. So that's what it takes effort and conscientious effort. And I all followers from my experience. And if you do that, and I'm not saying I was perfect at things, but the intention of trying to do it, if you make it some baby steps and trying to do it now, do it whenever you have now, no matter what age you are, whether you're a grandpa age or you're just starting off as a father, that the more time you can give to your kids, the more valuable that love, they know that you love them. And your personality may not be as vocal, just like telling you I love you every day, but your time will show that you love them because you care about them and you're interested in what they're doing. And not always scolding, not always trying to be the disciplinarian or tell you what to do. And as you get older, as the kids get older, each stage of getting older, you have to be parents differently. It's got to be a little more of a handoff, freedom, let them make the decisions, but you can still guide them to be a father. My last comment I just want to say is I've always talked to older men who are grandpas now and say, you're still a father. Don't forget, you're still a father to your children. Now, it's all different. You don't send them to their room for being naughty and they're 40 years old, but you still can be that fatherly love and guidance and direction, be there for them to help guide them through life, just as our Heavenly Father is for us through prayer and through the Savior. He's always our Father in heaven that we could turn to. So our parents, we don't just say, when you're 18, see you later, you're on your own. There's too many parents now.
Wow. Thank you so much. That was incredible. That was a wonderful nutshell of everything.
Yeah.
Even I love the advice that you gave to Orman as well in regards to making time yet again. And time can look different for everyone, but
Just by ages.
exactly. And the different kinds of stages that should come when you're in your fatherhood. I think that also just also mentally prepares you and being able to cope with a certain kind of emotions in the correct spaces. Absolutely loved that. And thank you.
So much for your time and also just to help us understand more about the brain of how fathers can cope with so much and how they can still make time and the importance of being present in your children's life. So thank you so much for joining us on this episode. We really appreciate everything that you've done and for giving Spring Foundation as well as just the advice that you gave in the interview.
Thank you.
And also,
You're doing a great job. Did you hear everything? Doing a great job. And thank you for sharing some thoughts.
Thank you. And also to our listeners out there, please do feel free to comment and subscribe and that we can hear a little bit more on what you guys are also thinking.
Yes. Until next time, guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. That was the one.